first, and then we would work on our budget requests.
It's fine. I really don't need very much money. Do you want money? Fine. I'm so tired.
Okay.
Sorry. Do you want me to start now?
And then no, we'll wait just a few more minutes.
Okay.
I'd like to get,
Let me know.
we're just waiting for a few more people and then we'll start.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I know we're at 6 o'clock. If we can wait for another minute or two and allow people to hop on. Six, seven. Don't think we're at quorum yet, right, Julie? Two. Okay. Just one more minute, if we can wait for one more minute to allow people to hop on.
I think we're at quorum.
We're at quorum?
Mhm.
Fabulous. Okay. Since it's 6:01, we can start. Good evening. My name is Renee Kinsella, and I'm chair of the Budget, Education, and City Services Committee of CB5, BEX for short. Julie Chu is the co-chair of this committee, and I want to thank you all for attending this evening. I just want to take a quick minute to thank Julie for all the work she has done on our budget requests, which we're going to hear tonight. Julie's been the person who has ordered and reordered these requests, and it's not easy. And I just wanted to thank her on behalf of the committee for all of her hard work on this. We have 2 action items on the agenda this evening. First, we are going to hear from Leonie Hameson from Class Size Matters. And then we're going to look at the ordering of the budget request and district needs statement. A brief overview of how our committee works. Presenters will be introduced and have the opportunity to present to the committee and the public. And after their presentation is concluded, the committee will be permitted to ask questions of the presenter. And when all of the committee's questions have been answered, members of the public will be permitted to ask questions of the presenter. We do not use the chat function, but would ask anybody who would like to speak to use the raise hand function. Once everybody's questions have been addressed, the committee will go into business session, and that's when members of the BEX committee discuss the issue amongst themselves and determine what action to take, if any. Any vote that's taken at this committee is then presented at our full board meeting, and the vote of the full board becomes the position of CB5. I'm going to turn to Leonie now, who's going to discuss a bill that's pending in the City Council, Intro 2374, which focuses on class size. Leonie, if I could turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me tonight. As many of you may recall, last year we had a really strong campaign going to allocate a significant part of the additional billions of dollars in state and federal funds that our schools are getting towards class size reduction, both because of the need for social distancing, but also because of the stronger academic and social support that smaller classes bring. And a big portion of that money is coming as a result of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit, in which the state's highest court said in 2003 that New York City kids were denied their right under the state constitutional to a sound basic education, in part because their class sizes were too large. And yet actually New York City class sizes on average have gone up since 2003, not down. The City Council pushed hard for $250 million to be spent on smaller classes this fall. The mayor's office and DOE refused. And instead, they are allocating $18 million for a very small program in a few elementary schools, which can be used either to lower class size or to put additional teachers in the classroom. We were very frustrated by the lack of action on this because there was such a strong consensus among elected leaders and parents and teachers that this is what our kids really needed. And we were finally getting enough money to do it. But it didn't happen. Then in July, Mark Traeger, the chair of the City Council Education Committee, and Speaker Corey Johnson introduced a bill that would effectively lower class sizes to much lower levels by changing the building code and the space requirements for New York City students from 20 square feet per student in classrooms to 35 square feet per student. The reason this was done through the building code was because of the system of governance we have in mayoral control. The city council has no direct authority over education policy except through the budget. So we are pushing hard for this bill to be passed. Hearings are going to be held on it tomorrow, actually. And so far, 28 council members have signed on, which is more than half of the entire city council. So we're looking pretty optimistically that it may be passed. And we want it to be passed before this council leaves, because as you know, there's going to be a huge turnover starting next year. I had reached out to Renee because one of the few council members that I knew who haven't signed on was Keith Powers. And I asked her whether the community board could write a letter or somehow express support for this bill. You guys did pass a very strong resolution last spring, in favor of the budget allocation for class size reduction. And so I thought it wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibilities that you might also support this bill, and urge Keith Powers to co-sponsor it as well.
Thank you, Leonie. I've sent a copy. I don't know if the exec members have received it, but the members of the committee certainly have received copies of the bill. Do we have questions for Leonie? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Julie?
Yeah, I was wondering how the 35 square feet was determined. It seems like almost double the square footage of 20.
I really can't answer that question because I was not in on any of the discussions about this bill. I heard that there was a bill coming, but nobody talked to me about it or really explained it to me. I think it's a very aggressive goal, and it's supposed to be phased in over 3 years. Honestly, I would prefer a longer time period and different space requirements by grade, because it's generally considered optimal to have the smallest class sizes in the early grades, and then they can go up somewhat with the other grades. And that's what I'm going to be suggesting. I believe, I don't know, because again, it wasn't really discussed with me, that they pushed for a very aggressive target in hopes that they would negotiate something out with the mayor that would be somewhere less aggressive. But what I've heard, again, I have no real inside knowledge, but I've heard that the mayor has so far not negotiated on any of this, but maybe he will after the hearings, or maybe he will after the bill passes or is about to pass. I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, so I can't really give you an explanation. We have done an analysis of what other states require in terms of space, and I can share that chart with you guys if you like. Generally speaking, around the country, there is more generous space per student in the codes than there is in New York City, where we have the smallest that we could find. At 20 square feet is like the smallest we saw anywhere else in the country.
Thanks, Leonie. Craig, you have a question?
Thanks. And I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm a member of the board, and I was invited for the other topic tonight. But thank you, Leonie. I have a couple of questions on this. The first question I have, and I'll ask them both, and then you can answer them, however you wish. Is there this, given that ultimately the schools are under the state, mayoral control is granted by the state, is there any push to have the class size under a state law? Like, have we gone to the assembly, the state assembly and the state senate? The second question is, when you go by X amount of feet per child, you can have a sort of loophole. And I'll give you an example. Another member of this committee and I both have our kids, which is true, both have our kids in the same school, in the same grade. Both of our children are in kindergarten in the same school. His daughter's classroom is significantly larger than my son's classroom. It's just the way the building was built. Classrooms aren't the same size. So under this policy, am I understanding correctly that because his daughter is in a much bigger classroom, her class size with one teacher could be significantly larger than my son's class size? Am I understanding how this is working correctly? Because it sounds to me that it's a terrible loophole, because a lot of classrooms from building to building and even within building just aren't the same size. Am I thinking about this correctly?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we have ranges in classroom sizes from about 500 to 750 square feet. My daughter, when she was in first grade, was in a double classroom. And then because things had gotten so overcrowded, the classroom size was cut in half. So it would lead to a variation in class size. However, all class sizes, whether the classroom was 500 square feet or 750 square feet, would still be quite a bit smaller than they are now. So all kids would benefit, as far as I can tell. The other question is also excellent. We pushed for a bill to be introduced in the state legislature last spring. One was introduced both in the state Senate and the state assembly that would renew New York City's obligation to reduce class sizes in all grades, which was in the original Contracts for Excellence law, which was passed as a result of the CFE lawsuit in 2007. Instead, class sizes went up, they didn't go down. We brought a lawsuit a few years ago about that situation, and the court said because the years mentioned in the bill had not been updated, it was a moot question. So now we are going to ask, the bill does update the law, the years of the laws in which New York City would have to produce and implement a 5-year class size reduction plan. We are pushing very hard for this bill to be passed, no matter what happens in the city council, because we do believe that the state has a stronger legal authority over our city schools, unfortunately, in my view, but that's the way it is, than the city council. So we are not going to rest, even if this bill passes, because there is a chance, I do believe, that it either is not enforceable or it will not be enforced if it is passed.
I have one more follow-up question on that. Given that we don't know what's happening with mayoral control, because I believe it's up next year, I think, if I understand that correctly.
Yes.
Are you guys, is your organization planning something in the event mayoral control goes away and we go back to whether it's a board of education like we had, 20 years ago, or city council oversight? Is there what steps is your organization taking at this point to
well, so we just there were just hearings held last week by this state assembly committee on school governance. I'm happy to share the testimony. I think only 5 people were invited to testify, which I thought was ridiculous, but I was one of them. I don't think there's any chance that it's going to go back to the previous system, because that was not a well-liked system, but we do have proposals on how we think the current system can be improved. And I'm happy to share with you our suggestions. And we are also working with some state assembly member in particular who thinks there is a good chance to improve the system. I don't think anybody thinks it will go back to what it was before. And by the way, the city council did not have any more authority over the previous system than it does now. It was always a board of education, which was separate from the city council. And the only influence the council could exert was through the budget.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Leonie. Mark, you have a question.
Hi, I was curious whether or not there's been any analysis of how many more teachers would need to be hired and the budgetary implications of that.
I have not done that budget estimate. I would be dishonest to say that wouldn't cost a lot of money, both in terms of capital expenses to expand school facilities, to build more schools, and to hire more teachers. I'm hoping that the UFT will do some sort of budget analysis, but I really haven't done that. I can tell you that we have several proposals in our testimony on how the cost can be reduced. One of the things that we're recommending is that as many pre-K and 3K seats be transferred into CBOs as possible. To create more room in elementary schools. There are thousands of empty seats in community-based organizations, many of which have complained that they've actually lost students since the pre-K program was expanded, and also empty seats in the city-run, the DOE-run pre-K centers. And so I think that would be a very good way to quickly free up space in elementary schools. We also have some other proposals on how, the capital plan can be accelerated and made more efficient over time. And I'm happy to share some of those suggestions with you as well. But I'm not going to pretend that it wouldn't be expensive. But I am going to say that we will have gotten over 3 years, $1.3 billion in additional state funds that will recur every year at that level, $1.3 billion. And that would pay for a big chunk, if not all of the cost of reducing class sizes to more reasonable levels.
Thank you.
Thanks. Joseph, I see your hand.
Thanks. Has Keith Powers, or I guess his staff, made any comment about why he's not yet supportive of this?
No, we had an email exchange with some of his constituents on this as well. And he kind of brushed us off. He didn't really explain it. I don't really know why.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leonie. Leila.
Thank you, Renee. Leonie, can you actually speak to the reluctance that the administration has to reduce class size? I mean, you and I go way back when my kids were in kindergarten at PS 116 and in a overcrowded class size with 32 kids, and things haven't changed. They've gotten worse. And it seems that the administrations have been consistently actually not interested in dealing with this issue, which has, as a parent of kids in the public school system, was always really very, frustrating and quite shocking. Can you actually speak to that on a policy level?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredibly infuriating and frustrating for me, who's been working on this for many years. Both Bloomberg and de Blasio came into office promising that they would reduce class size. Bloomberg promised that he would reduce class size to 20 in all schools, K through 3. De Blasio made a much larger promise that he would reduce class sizes to the original contracts for excellent sizes, which were 20 in K through 3, 23 in 4 through 8, and 25 in high school. Shortly after he elected, he made it very clear that he was not prepared to go through with that promise. And when I asked him at a town hall meeting why he was reneging on his promise, he said, look, I'm doing pre-K instead. And that was his response. It is true that there are serious budgetary implications. For many years, he said he wasn't going to do it until he got the CFE money. Now that he's gotten the CFE money, I don't think he has any excuse whatsoever. I didn't think he did before, but clearly his big priority was to first do the UPK program and then now expand 3K as much as possible. And he is planning on using nearly $1 billion of the additional federal funds, which are not recurring, on expanding 3K, even when he's left office. So what can I say? That's what he built his reputation. That's how he set down his flag as an education reformer. I'm certainly not against pre-K or 3K, but I think it could have been done in a far more equitable and progressive way so as not to further overcrowd schools that were already overcrowded.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leonie. Mary, I saw your hand and then I think you took it down. I'm not sure if you had a question.
Yeah, I think Mark and Leila kind of touched on exactly what I was thinking. One, Leila, like you, it's been many years since my son was in public school, but the dysfunction that I saw with the construction of new schools and going to those hearings, and this was under Bloomberg, just the intransigence that I saw. Is that what we're really dealing with here? That it's a space issue, and is there no thinking outside the box with all the new office space that's going unused, that people aren't saying that we can more quickly get these classes online to bring the class size down?
Yeah, I mean, at one point the DOE had this program where they were putting schools inside of new office and residential developments. And
Right.
I think a lot more emphasis should have been put on that and should continue to be put on that. We have a longstanding proposal that developers should have to either include space in their developments for schools or pay into a fund called impact fees for the construction of schools, which most of the large states have, not New York State, but most of them do. And then there are other proposals to make to change the ULURP system. We had a very specific proposal to change the ULURP process, which is highly flawed when it comes to schools. And the city council at that point said they rejected the proposal because of the lack of oversight they have, or the lack of authority they have over schools, even though I pointed out that ULURP is in the city charter, and so they have complete control over that. But there was a lot of resistance to doing anything on that. I mean, there are lots of ways, I think, that aggressively more space could be found. And certainly de Blasio found a lot of space for pre-K and 3K when it was a top priority very, very quickly. I mean, he even built a big pre-K center in a public park in Queens that's going to have hundreds of pre-K students in it. They're not that I'm supporting building in parks by any means, but I really think it takes a political will to do it. And I'm hoping that if these bills are passed, that will produce the impetus necessary to move forward on this.
Can I just ask real quickly, is it an overstatement to say that there's money unspent year after year for school construction?
It is true that there are many seats that are funded and are not cited and built every single year in the capital plan and the 5-year plan carried over to the next plan. And there were 2 bills passed to accelerate that process, and neither one has been complied with by the DOE. And I'm happy to give you more information on that as well. One of the bills was to make more transparent the enrollment projections and the way they come up with their seats needs projections, which they haven't complied with. The other bill was to form a task force to look at every empty lot, both privately owned and publicly owned, to analyze it for a potential school site. And that wasn't complied with either in a real way. So I think there are ways in which there is just a lack of impetus on the part of the bureaucracy to be as aggressive as they should be. And the only time that schools are built, even in communities where there's funding for that for many years, is when the local electeds get together with parents and put on a really, strong campaign to get those schools built. It happened in Sunset Park a couple of years ago. There were 5 schools that had been funded in Sunset Park for, I think, over 10 years and hadn't been built. And finally, the council member and some of the advocates and parents got together and started, just harassing then Chancellor Farini until they finally agreed to some of the sites, which they themselves, the local electeds and the parents, found in the community.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leonie. Are there any more questions from the committee? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, any questions from our attendees? Any questions there? All right, seeing none, I'm going to transfer into business session, and that is where members of the committee will discuss how we want to handle this issue at this point. I think given what Leonie mentioned at the start of her presentation, that time is of the essence, that the hearing is now happening tomorrow. The easiest way for the BEX committee to handle this, if in fact, I know that we are on record of having supported reduction in class size. I want to hear everyone's view, but what I'm thinking is a letter would be the most expedient rather than a resolution. So I'd like to hear everybody's view. They're thinking about this in terms of supporting the bill that Leonie presented. Comments? Is this something that the committee favors? Is this something that the committee supports? Good comments from anyone? Mary.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's the least we can do. And I think as Leonie just laid out, there's just this intransigence that we need to overcome. And this might be the first step, especially with the new administration on the horizon.
Thanks, Mary. Sam, I see your hand. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And I think a letter is a good idea.
Okay, other comments, other views? Hands, do I see any other hands from the committee members? Sam, you've already spoken. Does anyone else have a view? I know that the committee is on record of having supported a reduction in class size again and again and again. So my sense is that we are in favor. Robert, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say I'd definitely be in favor of a letter. The frustrating thing I think for us a lot of times is sort of the unfunded mandate problem, but given the tools at our disposal, I think availing ourselves of a letter. I mean, I'd frankly love to see a resolution, but it seems like logistically that's not going to be possible, or potentially even if it were, it's not going to be impactful because it's not going to get there until, the 59th minute. So I'm definitely in support.
All right, my sense is that the committee is in favor of a letter supporting this bill, and that we can CC our electeds, specifically our council members. Any other comments? Kim, I see your hand or your comment.
Yeah, just chiming in that I am in favor of a letter as well. Thanks so much.
Fabulous. Vicky? Thank you, Vicky, for.
Sure. Letter, great. I think a letter at this point, for time reasons, is the best, but I also think a letter is the best anyway. And what I would do is mention and add as an attachment our previous actions. So I think we had even more than one resolution on this, but take the strongest ones, add them, and have a letter, and it'll go out immediately over my signature and yours for the committee.
Fabulous. Thank you. Yes, because we've had, I think, year upon year upon year. Leonie, how many resolutions? 6, maybe?
I don't know. I don't keep track of them all. It's too depressing.
Layla.
Actually, I think we go back to 10 years ago, being on record asking for a reduction in class size. So we've been pretty, consistent, and the problem has been unfortunately enduring.
Tristan.
So I'm just reading some articles out there. So I don't know if this stays current, but one website is talking about how this applies to larger classroom spaces like music studios or assembly rooms or art, which are spaces which are designed for larger crowds to go in, like, for example, bands are larger. And so I'm just wondering whether we might want to raise the potential to consider whether it should apply to such spaces, because it might prevent certain students from participating in such activities if there are space restrictions.
We're actually in business session at the moment, but because Leonie is the expert in this, I'm going to ask her to address that for us, because I know that you are very steeped in this, Leonie. So I would.
This is I honestly have to read the bill again. I thought that it referred specifically to classroom space, regular classroom space. But if you're right, I mean, I'm trying to download it right now, but if you're right, I mean, I think that that's a fine amendment that could be made, because I do agree with you that we don't want to necessarily cut. I mean, though a lot of people say, like, gym has 50 kids per class. A lot of people say that's too many, but I don't think we need to go there. And to, point out that it should be specifically for instructional classroom space, rather than gyms or music rooms or whatever. That would be fine with me.
Thank you. And thank you for that point, Tristan. Any more comments from the committee? Seeing none, my sense is that the committee is very much in favor of a letter in support of this bill. And we can also attach all of our previous, sounds like going back 10 years of resolutions in support of class size reduction. and taking on board Tristan's comment regarding gyms and art rooms. Do I hear a motion in favor of a letter?
I move.
Thank you, Natalie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tristan. Julie, can I ask you to?
Yes. Renee,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Zach,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Natalie,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Tristan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Raga,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and July. Sorry, I saw July here, but then maybe she left. Okay, motion passes.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Leonie. We will get out that letter as soon as we possibly can, given that we are mindful of the timing.
Thank you
for
so much, guys. I really appreciate all your support over so many years. It's really very gratifying.
Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to the budget. I know that everyone has received the materials, both our most pressing issues, the district needs statement, and the capital and expense requests. I don't think that we need to go line by line, given that everybody has ordered and reordered and has received the final documents. What I'd like to do is take people's comments, concerns about both the expense and the capital requests, any concerns about the ordering, or any concerns or comments, additions, subtractions to the district needs statement. So first, if Julie, if you could share the expense requests. Does anyone have comments? If you could raise your hand, any concerns about the ordering, any comments about the ordering? Please raise your hand. I'm not seeing. Don't see anyone's hand raised. Any comments at all about the expense requests? Is everybody A-okay? Any questions about the way that they are ordered? The way that we did this is, as you recall, we went through this line by line at the last meeting. People spoke to the ordering of the requests. We then had people reorder offline. We reordered those requests in line with the committee's comments, and then it went to executive committee for their comments and additions and subtractions, and we reordered again. Any comments? Okay, I'm seeing none, so I'm going to move to the capital requests. Does anyone have any comments, concerns, or issues with the capital requests? The ordering of the capital requests, any additions, any comments?
Renee, can I say something?
Please.
You asked me to remind you that I had a late addition here that folks might not have reviewed if they were looking at the PDFs attached. It's down at the bottom. I actually wasn't sure whether it should come from DCAS or DEP. So, you know, I'll leave it up to you whether that we should discuss that here or whether, you know, that would be better offline. But I just want to point that out.
Right. Joseph asked that this additional thing from the Midtown South Community Council, who is they're looking for garden space. The reason that I asked Joseph to add this to our request was that we had only 38 capital requests, and it seems a shame to let any request at all on the table. And so to the extent that they have not identified a specific space, but are interested, we do want to include it. And it is, we can figure out the DCAS or the DEP once we're entering the request itself. Any comments or concerns about the capital requests?
So Renee, we have 37 total now with Joseph's addition. So we have 3 openings if people want to
Are
make
there any other capital requests that people have researched or thought about within our district that are specific and identifiable? Any comments? I have to say that it's typical for us to have many more expense requests than capital requests, so this is not unusual.
Studies are expenses, right? They're not a capital, or is it the other way around? Okay.
Yeah, it's expense. Yeah, we have a lot of study requests, Tristan, as you know, usually. All right, seeing no comments or about the capital requests, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve these budget requests, both capital and expense.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Julie, could we vote on that?
Yes. I'm gonna stop sharing screen so I can watch. Renee?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Zach? Did we lose Zach? Okay, we'll come back. Mary?
Yes.
Natalie?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Tristan?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Blaga?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes. Yes.
Kim? Okay, Kim?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And then Zach? Or July? I see July's back.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
I just want to thank as well all the committee chairs that are here tonight and appreciate all the input that they've had on the budget request and also on the district needs statement. If we could now turn to the district needs statement. I believe everybody has received a copy of this. I'd like everybody's comments, everyone's questions about the text. Do we have any changes? Additions? Please raise your hand. Oh, Layla, did I see you?
Yeah, it may be a little bit late in the game, but I was wondering if the issue of Penn Station could be folded into this document. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that the city should spend money on Penn Station. I think that the funding should come from the state and the federal government. But I'm just wondering if, for the record, we should add some language to that effect. It is such an important issue. Although the proposal that was introduced by the governor is currently on pause, if this proposal were to pass, it would have a negative impact on the city budget because it would basically siphon away revenue from real estate taxes that currently go into the city coffers, and then these taxes would be siphoned off to go to the state coffers. So it may be a little bit late in the game. I'm cognizant of that, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay. I think it was remiss of us maybe not to have included something like that, given the impact that it will have on our district. This is a district needs statement, and it sort of paints the picture of the district as it is now, and this is coming down the pike. So I think you're right. Do you have language that you would like to add specifically that we could, is it a paragraph? It is a line or two that we could add?
Yeah, it's probably a line or two. I can cook up something pretty quickly, and it would be along the lines of, we want to make sure that no project involving Penn Station and its surroundings would diminish the tax revenue of the city, and that all the funding would be secured in such way that would not impact city resources. Something along those lines. We basically want to be, protective. It's tricky because, there is a proposal, but this proposal is highly controversial. We have a new governor who basically has put this proposal on pause. We don't really know. I mean, she has not made any public statements as to how she is going to weigh in and, rule on the proposal of her predecessor. But, it's fair to say that she doesn't seem to be particularly enthused. But it's also important to recognize that, that something is going to be done and something should be done to renovate Penn Station. It's a dire need of it's a nationwide imperative that something is done there. We just want to make sure that we are protecting the resources of the city, and that the bottom line is that we want the feds to really carry their fair share. I mean, they own the train station itself, because of Amtrak, and want to make sure that any plan is not coming and eating away at the resources of the city.
I understand. How does the committee feel about Layla's friendly amendment about Penn Station? I think it's a good add to our district needs statement. Do I have any comments from the committee, questions from the committee about adding that? What do you guys think? Anyone?
Are we thinking we put that in one of the policy areas or the district overview?
In the district needs statement. So the district needs statement is a snapshot every year, as you know, that we.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but within the district needs statement, there's a section for the district overview and then a section for each of the most pressing issue by policy areas. So which area are we trying to put it in?
My sense, Layla, if I'm reading you correctly, is it would be in the original introduction about the general area of our district. Would that be correct? Is that what you were thinking when you were proposing that?
I would really leave it up to you guys. I think you're way, more versed in the form that this document has to take. So I'm pretty open to any thoughts that you may have on where it's more appropriate.
Thank you, Natalie.
I agree. And I think that if we don't put that in our statement, it's going to be the elephant in the room because it has such a big impact on our district.
Thank you. Tristan, were you thinking in the general introductory, which is
I think that makes perfect sense because if we put it in the other section, we'd have to bump one of the needs out to fit that in. So I think if you put in the overview, that's perfect.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's at the point where it could be one of our, I don't think it's come to fruition yet where it's one of our needs. As Layla says, it's sort of in abeyance right now. It's something that's coming, obviously, and needs to be done. But I think if we are aware of it and put it front and center in the introduction, knowing that it's coming, it will probably take more focus next year. We'll probably have more information. Layla, your hand.
Definitely next year we'll have, a better sense of how the proposal is going to shape up, who's going to have jurisdiction. So yeah, I think it would be great.
Right. So I'm getting the sense that we are in agreement to add this to our introduction about the district in our district needs statement. Any other comments against? Any problems with adding this? Raise your hand. Who has their hand raised? I see someone does. Joe.
No, I agree. It should be included, although I do think it could fit nicely into the housing, the commercial district revitalization easily within that language without adding another line in addition to the overview.
Okay. We can see if we can, I can take Layla's suggestion and I can figure out both in the introduction and if we can figure out also to add it in the revitalization, because I think you, as you rightly point out, it is revitalization as well. Maybe we can add it there as well. How do people feel about that? Getting the sense that we're in favor of that. Any other hands raised on that issue? Okay, seeing none, I propose that what we're going to do is add Layla's language both in the introduction and we'll see if we can add it to the revitalization. Are there any other comments about Mary? You're muted.
I guess I was jumping on what, is it okay to add a different issue right now?
Yes,
Or
we can.
suggestion?
Okay. I
Okay.
just want to make sure everybody, I'm not seeing any other hands about Penn Station. We're going to add Penn Station. I see no other comments or questions from anyone. So we're going to go ahead and add that language. And now we can move to any other comments or questions about the district needs statement. Mary.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't type this out in advance, but looking on page 3, you know, the third paragraph that says finally mental illness, which tends to go hand in hand with homelessness. Could we just maybe take a slightly different approach and say something like a disproportionate number of our homeless neighbors suffer from severe and persistent mental illness, or single adults? Because just saying that mental illness goes hand in hand with homelessness, I think really doesn't do it justice.
Sure, I like that. I defer to your expertise in that area. Does anyone else have any response to that? I'd like to, I think that that's a good point. Anyone? Any comments, any questions about that? Any concern about making that correction? Okay, I see nothing on that. I'm going to move then finally to any other concerns, questions, comments, changes to the district needs statement. Mary, your hand is still raised. Do you have another issue?
No, I'm sorry. I'll put it.
Okay. I just want to check in with the chairs of the other committee that they're okay. I know that we touch on all of your issues, that we've got it right. If you have any comments or questions or anything. Clayton.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you so much for your really careful work on this. I know, Julie, you did such an incredible heavy lift here and the whole committee with your attention to these. And I'm gratified and excited to see that the Director of Public Realm topic we've been keeping it alive over the last year and a half or so. And I just wanted to flag that the kind of gambit for that particular topic has always, from the beginning, has kind of been to the administration's transition. So I look forward to kind of brainstorming with you all how we will resuscitate that conversation once we do have a new administration. And I think this document is going to go a long way towards giving us the kind of ammunition that we need to do so. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Clayton. EJ.
Similarly, on behalf of Transportation and Environment, wanted to say thanks for all the obvious and detail-oriented hard work that went into really both these documents. I definitely endorse Layla's suggestion that we mention Penn Station, which is a critical issue across several different committees and domains for the neighborhood. And similarly, just want to say thanks for working with us to include some DOT enforcement issues, which again I think affect a bunch of different issues that affect all our different committees. And the discussion that we had and the inclusion of funding for those various efforts was very much appreciated.
Thank you, EJ. Okay, I'm getting the sense I don't see any other hands, any other comments. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the district needs statement.
So moved.
And excuse me, I want to say with Layla's additions and with Mary's language correction. So if I may have a motion, including Layla's addition and Mary's addition.
So moved.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that little snafu. Julie, could we take the vote?
Renee,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Zach, Mary,
Yes.
Natalie,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Tristan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Blaga,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and July.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for all your work on the budget request, capital and expense, and also the district needs statement. We really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great rest of the evening and a happy Halloween.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
everyone.